Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti, hoping you guys are having a good day. And again, that you're looking after yourselves and each other. We are back with day four of our 31 perfect albums. I am again joined by Bill Schuster. How's it going, Bill?
I'm doing great, Armando. Glad to be here.
Glad you're here. Ken Cheshire, how's it going, Ken?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And the one and only Mr. Jim Bricker. How you doing, Jim?
Doing pretty darn good, Armando. Happy to be here as well.
I'm happy you're here. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have taken 31 albums that we think or feel are perfect, top to bottom, all killer, no filler. And we have decided to give you our list. So we hope you enjoy this list. And again, before I begin, if you guys have any comments to make or any opinions, please put them down there, down below in the comment section. And as I've said before, we like to get a bit of a dialogue going with these selections, right? No right or wrong answers, just opinion. So,
I
yes,
would like to start a dialogue on something,
go
if
ahead.
I may. Um,
You may, depending.
okay. So these are not necessarily our favorite albums. There
Okay.
just happen to be 31 albums that we think are perfect. I think we were saying on another episode that Bill had a list of like 64 that had to get pulled down. So there are many more albums, perfect in the realm, and we're certainly just kind of covering our ones. We're also covering them chronologically.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
isn't like a ranking of we think this is the most perfect of our list of 31 or whatever. We're just marching through time with this
hmm
list.
hmm Yeah. Okay. No,
That's the
you're
end of my interruption.
right. No problem. Back to our regular schedule program, folks. So, over to Bill with his number one
All right.
for the day.
Thank you. And yeah, I absolutely agree with what Jim said about this. Yeah, these are by all means not necessarily the favorites. And just for me personally, I'm only allowing myself one pick per artist. So just for my own pure entertainment and challenge.
Unfortunately, I can't
Entertainment, you
say the
say?
same. So,
Yeah. All right. I'm moving up to the year 1967. I said I was only going to have one classical album. This one is related. And it's also considered by some people to be the first progressive rock album.
I wonder.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
It is the second album by this band, the first with new
Yeah.
members Justin Hayward and John Lodge. It is Days of Future Past by the Moody Blues,
ah,
Yes.
featuring the London Festival Orchestra conducted by Peter Knight. Yeah, this some people don't like the orchestral pieces here. I think they're absolutely gorgeous and they blend well with the Moody's
Mhm.
own tunes. I think it's pretty seamless, really.
Mhm.
And this actually is my favorite Moody Blues album. I love all the classic seven and some beyond that as well, but this always remains my favorite because it's unique in their catalog. I mean, after this, they moved on to In Search of the Lost Chord, and Mike Pinder's Mellotron took place of the orchestra basically from that point out. But the London Festival Orchestra, if I recall correctly, it was a bit of a pickup orchestra. It wasn't actually a functioning orchestra that was performing regularly that they hired. It was put together for this album. Of course, you have the big hits on here Tuesday Afternoon, which on the album is called The Afternoon, Forever Afternoon, Tuesday with the question mark. It's probably a good thing they went with Tuesday Afternoon for the title of the single release.
mhm.
And of course, The Night, subtitled Nights in White Satin, which is possibly their most famous song.
Yeah.
Um, and should always only be played at full length with the full vocal outro. That's a vital
Yeah.
part of the whole piece, the whole story. It's
Oh yeah.
anybody that's familiar with this album knows it's essentially a musical day in the life. You know, the day begins, dawn, the morning, lunch break, the afternoon, evening, and night. And it's a fun journey. It sounds great on vinyl. I've also got the surround and Blu-ray and all that good stuff because, well, as much as I love this album, I need all kinds of different copies to be played on all sorts of different equipment.
Well, makes sense.
And yeah, they nothing against Denny Lane and Clint Warwick, who were original members that were replaced by Justin and John, but this is where the Moody Blues really became the Moody Blues.
Yeah, that's a long way from Go Now, isn't it?
Yes, it is, which is a wonderful pop song. I love Go
Oh
Now,
yeah.
but it's a whole different thing altogether. And really, oddly enough, the 5 original band members are all gone now. Justin and John and Patrick Moraz. Basically, the 3 replacement members are the only survivors of the Moody Blues at this point,
Yeah.
which is kind of odd.
Mm.
It's sad. Yeah.
But yeah, another timeless album, never gets old. I can play it from start to finish anytime, and I'm quite happy. It's just full of life. It's full of joy. It's a very happy album, even in its more melancholy sections.
Mhm. Good choice. Yeah, I bought that a couple of years ago, actually. I'm a late bloomer for certain things, guys. So, um, but no, it is a good album, and it is a seamless album. Just it flows beautifully. Um, okay, Ken, over to you.
Okay, I am going to hit an artist I've already hit in this series from October 1973, Quadrophenia. Um, their second double album after Tommy, um, released 2 years after Who's Next,
Mhm.
and it's probably tied for my favorite album by them, along with Who's Next. It's somewhat biographical. It is a rock opera. It tells a story about the rivalry between the mods and rockers in England back in the 60s. It's a very British album. It's kind of like the Kinks. I think there are people at the time, a lot of people in the US, it's just like, going, I don't get it. What is this? But what they did is they included um, the liner notes. There was actually a booklet with photographs and with a narrative written in there that kind of helped people understand what was really going on. Um, this album takes what Pete Townsend started in working with the synthesizers and the electronics, just took it to the next level. It's it's the only album without the John Entwistle song on it. At the time, I've read in several places that uh, a lot of people felt that it was more of a Pete Townsend solo album with the Who kind of as a backing band, and also that Roger Daltrey didn't like the mix, at least where his vocals fell in the mix. Um, and that could be. I don't have an original copy of the album. All of my copies are more recent remasters and remixes. And like Bill, I've got it in just about every single form that it's ever been released in. Most popular song off the album is arguably Love, Rain or Me, which is a very one of the best closing songs of an album, in my opinion. And I just learned recently, it starts out with the sounds of seas and waves crashing or whatever. And then it goes into a song called The Real Me, which features one of my favorite John Entwistle bass lines. I mean,
Oh
that
yeah.
intro is incredible. I just saw recently that he completely improvised that. That's a one take. And he just decided,
Sick.
I'm going to try this. They listened back to it and said, that's perfect. We're not changing a thing, which just goes to show what a genius Entwistle was, both as a musician, as a composer.
Mhm.
And he remains one of my probably in my top five of all bass players. And which is fascinating because his nickname was the Quiet One.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's just everything about it just is it's one of these immersive experiences, both musically and with the story. And as I listen to it, especially with headphones, the sound is just pulls me in. And even though I wasn't a mod or a rocker or in Britain at all, it's there's still something that we can relate to. You know, a young man trying to fit in, um, getting grief from his dad, the rebellion of being a teenager, something that everybody, can really relate to. The family dynamic, the dynamic between a young man and his peers, peer pressure,
Mhm.
and all of that, and just wrapped in just beautiful, incredible music. Um, Roger Daltrey's vocals are just absolutely amazing. Um, but yeah, this is going to be my second Who in the series, and I'll stand behind it. I will die on this hill.
Nothing wrong with the repeat. That's going to happen with me too. So
Yeah.
So Ken, I got a quick question on Quadrophenia for
Yeah, all
you.
right. Bring
You
it.
don't, so you don't feel like the album kind of buckles or stumbles with the two lengthy instrumental tracks on side one and side four?
Not for me.
Okay.
not for me either.
Um, Townsend, they did the same thing in Tommy, with Sparks and Underture,
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I enjoy those. And I think one of the reasons I enjoy it is because he does the same thing that classical composers
Hmm.
do or did. They take little snippets of themes, of melodies and whatever from other songs, and
And
he
incorporate
blends
it.
them together.
Yeah.
Yep. Restates it,
Yeah,
differentiates it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And considering the theme, quadrophenia, meaning there's four different personalities or faces, which
Yep.
each of the personality is represented by a member of the band, and that it it really, I think if one were really to look into it really hard to see how those themes, how he blends the themes together, is also an instrumental representation of the story, the progression of the album and the story.
Hmm.
Um, it's to me, it's not just a rock opera, but it's much more so to me than Tommy is
Mhm.
because there's a sound that is more on the level of a, a, a grand scale, so to speak. Um, Roger Daltrey's vocals are um, much more expressive than they were in Tommy to me.
Hmm.
And so everything is just grander. And that's one of the things that is very popular about classical opera. It's very grand in its presentation and its orchestration,
Very
extreme
opulent.
in the vocals. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there.
I
Well,
have a
thank
quick
you.
question also.
Yeah.
Um, I know the
No.
word, but I don't know how to pronounce it. But you being much more educated in this area than myself, you may know it's used in Richard Bachner's work quite a bit. Leitmotif, is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
recurring themes and
Yes.
okay, cool. Is that essentially what you're seeing happening?
Yeah, exactly. There also leitmotif is also a legitimate and probably a little bit more pure of a pronunciation of it, the leitmotif. And Wagner is probably the granddaddy of leitmotif. So, and that's exactly, what Townsend does here. And he did it in Tommy too, but I like this better than Tommy.
Yeah, I gotta say I do prefer Quadrophenia to Tommy.
Yeah.
As much as I do love Tommy, I do prefer the production on Quadrophenia, just the overall packaging, the music, everything is just spot on for me. But because everyone does
And
mention
also with the
Tommy.
success of Tommy on Broadway,
Yeah.
we are now going to get Quadrophenia the ballet. I don't know if you've seen that in the news, called
Okay.
a mod ballet, Quadrophenia. I'm very curious about that,
Okay.
especially if they're going to use the original recording or if they're going to have a pit band, playing and singing it, because ballet doesn't usually have singing. So
It should be interesting.
That's the
it should
mod
be.
portion of it. It's modern ballet.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Jim, over to you.
All right, mine number four.
Day four.
Again, a repeat band for me. The Beatles. This is 1965's Rubber Soul. Um, their fifth album overall from, the Parlophone albums. Second one of all original tunes. And it's, again, hard to believe that this is the same band, from just, 2 years prior released Love Me Do. I mean, it's just in the growth of this band just can't even it's hard to believe that these are the same same groups of guys. They were just this sponge taking in everything. And I think the biggest absorption they did for this album is folk and some of the influences of Bob Dylan
Yeah.
and soul music that they got from the US. And it's just this amazing fusion of pop, folk, um, soul. And again, each tune just has this, variety and feeling to it that's just very, very distinct, but it all kind of works together. Drive my car, Norwegian Wood, You Won't See Me, Nowhere Man, Think for Yourself. I mean, I'm just kind of reading the track list from the very beginning. The Word, Michelle. I mean, all very distinctive tunes that wouldn't seem like they fit well together, but they sure darn well do. Um, 14 tracks overall. The album includes In My Life, which is, was probably John Lennon's greatest song up to that point. Um, If I Needed Someone is another great tune I want to call out. Um,
Yeah, the
yeah,
George Harrison track. Yeah, if I needed someone.
yeah. There's like Bill, I had to do some pruning of my list. Otherwise, it would have been really overrun with Beatles albums. But I could not exclude Rubber Soul. It's just um, some some pop rock perfection. And again, one of those things like in the context, this is the thing that lit a fire under Brian Wilson. And we would not have Pet Sounds if it were not for Rubber Soul. And of course we would not have Sergeant Pepper if we didn't have Pet Sounds. So they were just musical gifts that they kept giving to one another, spurring
Yeah.
them forward.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, it's a good choice.
It's definitely one of my top four Beatles. And to me, Revolver and Rubber Soul is like a perfect double album. I
Mhm.
put them together in my head. And the thing about it is, you talk about looking back, not being, say, a teen during the time of the Beatles, they achieved in just a few years, as far as growth and progression, what most other bands don't achieve in 15 or 20 years.
Right.
People
That's
looking
right.
back Beatles, they think, oh, well, that's, yeah, I can see the progression, but, and
But
just assume that it's 10 or 15 years. they weren't together very long.
No,
Not at
7 years, but
all.
also you got to remember too, just to add this in too, the Beatles, along with artists of that time, were signed to a 2 record a year
Yes.
contract. So they had to release 2 albums a year. So luckily, at some point, they hit, you know, in terms of like, okay, we're putting out all this content, something's got to hit. And luckily, they caught on a wave and they went with it. I mean, they were
Mhm.
really coming into their own by this point. And just to touch on your comment about Dylan being an influence, there's this big infamous story about when Lennon met Dylan for the first time. You know, how he was such an awe of Dylan, and Dylan looked at Lennon and said, "Your writing is shit. Your writing is crap. You're not writing. Like what's this? Please, please me, love me, do. What is this shit? You know, like what are you actually saying with your music?" And John's
Wow.
like, it knocked me down a couple of pegs because here I am thinking I'm John Lennon, I'm in the Beatles, and I've come this far. And Dylan saying, basically saying, you're shit. Like,
Pick up your game, boy.
exactly. You know, you want to write like me? Good luck, is basically what he said to him. And that
It's
inspired him
great.
to say, okay, we need to go deeper. We need to like try something different, you know. And out comes, you know, tomorrow never knows kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. No, it's a
The
good
other quick
choice.
comment I want to thank you. The other quick comment I want to insert in there that not only were they together a very short time, but they accomplished their discography, what they did before any of them were 30.
Yeah, yeah. Um, just to add on to that, brief tangent. Um, During the documentary for the Wings Over the World tour, when they landed in Australia, and one of the reporters said, "How old are you now?" And McCartney says, "Oh, I'm 33. Don't you think you're too old to be on stage, to be performing at 33? Don't you think you're too old to be doing this? What are you doing?" And Paul McCartney says, "You know what? You come to the show tonight. You tell me if I'm too old." You know, you see what we do on stage, and then you can tell me if I'm too old or not. You can just imagine him getting in the car saying to Linda, you know, like, did you hear what that SOB just said to me? Like, what, and like, who the hell does he think he is, kind of a thing. But it's just, he's like, yeah, 33 is too old to be on stage and performing. Like, come on, like, give me a break, right? But what they
And I
found,
wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't argue with anyone who, if they were to say that George Martin was the fifth Beatle.
yeah, no,
I wouldn't argue with that.
I would agree. I would agree. No, it's a good choice, Jim. It's a good choice. We must carry on, ladies and gentlemen. My pick for day 4. It's not my favorite album, but top to bottom, and this is the first time this band's going to appear in the list. First of 2 times, spoiler alert. We have Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd, released March 1st, 1973 to Harvest Records. You cannot deny the fact that this album, when it came out, set the standard for what was to come after from every other band, in terms of what other bands wanted to achieve. Sonically, it is fantastic. 10 tracks, you know, a bit of a side note. The first time I heard this album, I had a neighbor that lived 2 doors over from us in the cul-de-sac we lived in. His name was Eddie Guerra, and he gave me a copy of this album. Guys, I was 8 years old. What the hell was I going to know about Dark Side of the Moon at 8 years old? But Eddie said to me, you know, Armando, this is a very, how he put it to me was, this is a very special album. So you really need to listen to this. And I put the album on, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I heard heartbeat. How the hell was I going to sonically digest what is happening on this, you know, on this album? But it's fantastic, top to bottom. You know, Speak to Me on the intro, Breathe, you know, all the tracks, as you all know, segue into one another. It's basically a a concept album in the most, I guess, loose sense of a concept album, dealing with themes of like mortality, commerciality, society as a whole, questioning your place in society overall. After Breathe, you have the sequence, On the Run, which originally was called the travel sequence. Then it goes into Time with the chimes going off and the grandfather clocks, etc. Segues back into Breathe, Reprise, and then the Great Gig in the Sky, ending up side one. Claire Torrey. Holy shit. I mean, a beautiful uh, musical piece written by, Richard Wright, and just amazing over the top vocals by Claire Torrey. Quite rightly so, she sued for, um, you know, songwriter credits for the track, and she won.
Mhm.
Around 2003, she won the case in
Mhm.
court. Just an amazing. Side two starts off with Money, that 7/8 time signature with the bass. Just amazing. And then it goes into the 4/4 section and the midsection, 4/4 time. Fucking brilliant. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't say it any other way. I'm sorry. Just great. And then Us and Them. Beautiful, poignant, um, brilliant. The instrumental, Any Color You Like, just with the panning of the vocals and the guitars on certain sections, just brilliant. Brain Damage, the lunatic is on the grass, it's like, my God. And then it segues into Eclipse. I mean, it's a slice of perfection. Any way you want to cut it, it's brilliant. And the fact that, stories came out that Paul McCartney and Wings were recording Band on the Run in the next studio. They had them do the call in, the answering the questions that they had interspersed throughout the album. Um, it's just brilliance on vinyl. I'm sorry. And there are many versions of this album out. I have it on vinyl,
Mhm.
CD. I have the immersion box set. Yes, I do.
Yep.
Big surprise.
Me too.
Just brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Not that the whole hype about Roger Waters redoing the album aside, let's get back to the music. That's what it comes right down to for me. And this is a Pink Floyd album. It is not a Roger Waters solo album. Yes, the idea was his, and yes, he did write the lyrics, but the other three contributed just as much. Okay. And anyone that's gonna take issue with me, either on the panel or in the comments, bring it on. That's all I'm gonna say. It is what it is. There you go, Bill. That is
We've had those
for day
discussions. We
4.
don't need to beat
Yeah.
that poor horse.
There you go. There we go. That's my pick for day 4, Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. Perfection.
It's also a perfect pairing of artist and producer.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's just, I mean, Alan Parsons, um, he was just brilliant. If you haven't seen the classic album documentary,
Yes, you have
Mm.
to.
it's almost as good as listening to the album itself.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see them recording and more background stories and stuff like that. It's mesmerizing. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, but I do think that again, when Roger Waters re-released the updated version of the Redux or Redo, however you want to call it, I'll pronounce it. The press that he did before the release of the re-release, to me, tarnished that release overall, like the re-release, not the album itself, but the fact that he went to great lengths to say that the concept was mine, the lyrics were mine, the other three did their part, but this was my album, it was my project. Who in the hell do you think you are? I'm sorry. Like, to me, it tarnished the entire idea of that re-release. I mean, Bill listens to it and Bill likes it, and that's fine. Bill understands what he's doing with it.
Well,
I can't stand
I'm
it.
in a minority. I'm aware of that.
I can't stand it. I can't stand it. And it's not the fact that he does the vocals in a monotone, like low register monotone kind of delivery, no peaks or valleys in terms of his delivery. I just think that the original is perfection, and it's gonna go down the histories of rock as the best album. It was one of the best albums of all time.
When my kids were about 12 and 10, I played Dark Side of the Moon for them, and I think they had never heard anything like it, and just everything from the soundscapes that were built to the performances, Gilmore solo on Time, Claire Torrey's vocals on Great Gig in the Sky, just the whole compositional, melody of Great Gig in the Sky is just, perfection. I don't that album would not be what it is, I think, without that tune. It anchors the entire thing.
Yeah.
And for if there's anyone out there who has not heard Dark Side of the Moon in its totality in one sitting, do yourself, correct a grave injustice and get on it now.
Do
This
it with
is
headphones.
sorry. This is
Yes,
the
yes.
yeah, headphones, definitely. This
Yeah.
is the one album where you don't mind getting off the couch to flip over to side two and put the needle down and listen to it. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So, but yeah,
And
You
the
need to
first
catch your
30
breath.
seconds,
Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
the first 30 seconds of time makes a great alarm tone for your phone. Not going to sleep through that one.
oh yeah,
No.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Bill. It didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry.
Go ahead. What were you going to say, Bill?
I just said that as far as flipping over to side two, I said you need to catch your breath after Great Gig in the Sky.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Yeah,
stop and reflect on. Yeah, I think that's my favorite track on the album. As much
yeah.
as we go back and forth about Roger Waters, Armando knows I'm a huge fan of Roger as an artist overall, but I'm also a fan of Pink Floyd the band when all four of those guys were together. And Roger talks a lot of crap. It's what Roger does. It's just part of who he is. It doesn't faze me. He knows and he's admitted that those guys played a big part. It's, they go back and needle each other.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, that's my favorite songs on this album, other than Time, which is a top 3 on the album. The other 2 favorites are Great Gig and Us and Them, the 2 Rick Wright
Yeah.
songs. So
Mhm. That's right.
Yeah.
Go figure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Episode 4 of our 31 perfect albums. Again, please put in the comments down below what your favorite album is. Doesn't matter from what decade. Again, there are no right or wrong answers, just opinions. So I want to thank Bill, Ken, and Jim for joining me for this episode. We'll see you again very soon for episode 5 of our 31 perfect albums. Bye for now.